It's real.
Ooh, I like counting money when it's new. I still on my body, got me cool. Need to make a play. All I gotta say is never going back to minimum wage. True, I'm the lovest singer that you knew. Know we going up, me and the crew. Need to make a play. All I gotta say is never going back to minimum wage. I'ma go and get the bag, make it anywhere I can. Wanna spend it, get it back. So why not take a chance? In a new city, making waves. Got a high class and wanna taste. Yeah. Ay, glory, 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 hallelujah. Jazz making moves, doing it too. Moving to a bigger city, more lights. Everything is much bigger in life. Got a little money, now I don't know how to act. Got a new chick, don't know how long this will last. I'm a living legend in the making. Yeah, the world is mine just for the taking. Can't stop, I want it all. Money stacked from wall to wall. Ooh, I like counting money when it's blue. I saw my body, got me cool. Need to make a play. All I gotta say is never going back to minimum wage. True, I'm the lovest singer that you knew. Know we going up, me and the crew. Need to make a play. All I gotta say is never going back to minimum wage. I'm one of the best, you know, if we being honest. Yeah, I'ma be great, and that to you I promise. Stepped on for a moment, but it won't be for long. Cause I'ma get my moment, I'll show you I'm not wrong. Me and CB and I lead the place, talking about how everything's gon' change. When we looking, got a million friends, we ain't going back to minimum wage. When I got money, fans is flocking. Rest can't even stand inside my pocket, ayy. Highest fashion, look like bosses. Cool won't ever take no losses. Got a new diamond chain, started switching like AKs. Hopping over private plane, getting right up on the stage. Ooh, I like counting money when it's new. I saw my body, got me cool. Need to make a play. All I gotta say is never going back to minimum wage. True, I'm the lovest singer that you knew. Know we going out, me and the crew. Need to make a play. All I gotta say is never going back to minimum wage. Ooh, I like counting money when it's new. I saw my body, got me cool. Need to make a play. All I gotta say is never going back to minimum wage. True, I'm the lovest singer that you knew. Know we going cool. Need to make a play. All I gotta say is never going back to minimum wage. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ay, never going back to minimum wage. Never going back to minimum wage. Yeah, get real, yeah. Sweet dreams and melodies, hope there'll never be tragedies. I just want you right next to me. I just wanna be here with you. Make all my dreams come true. Love songs and harmonies, we just laugh like it's comedy. Cause we're right where we wanna be. I just wanna be here with you. Make all my dreams come true.
Hi, my name's Alexa, and this is our history. It's time to stop whispering and time to start speaking about a time in our history that so many try to keep forgetting. You shut us out, so we created our own story. A story of successes and riches and full of black glory. Black Wall Street, the first of many black successes, thriving bankers, doctors, and even entertainers. So why are you so upset? Did we do something wrong? I mean, we thought that this is what you all wanted all along. We paved our own way. We stayed far away. Now y'all still want to just take it all away. Yet, we'll fight and work hard because we have the chance to. and we will never forget what our ancestors were not able to do. So here's to Madam Walker, Jeremiah Hamilton, Michael Jordan, and Oprah Winfrey too. We hope we can make y'all proud. Show the world what Black folks can do.
Here we go. So welcome back, everybody. This is my story. I'm Christian Hatcher.
And I'm Brian Hatcher, and this is my story.
All right. So just so you guys know what This Is My Story is, if this is your first time you're listening, This Is My Story is a talk show that I created after going and seeing that a lot of Black people don't have the opportunity to really tell their stories the way they want to tell them. The media portrays us in very different ways than we portray ourselves. We are all people, and the goal of this story, the goal of this talk show is to break down those stereotypes that the media gives us. So today I am interviewing Brian Hatcher. Brian is my cousin, and he's doing some big things. I'm excited to just dig in and get into what he has to say about his story and the world in general. So how you doing today, Brian?
I'm doing great. I can't complain. It's a good day. Got up early, got to it, been productive, and excited to share with you.
Amen. All right, so Brian, as we usually start out this show, introduce yourself to the audience. What would you say if someone came up and asked you, who is Brian Hatcher?
Oh boy, that's a packed question.
Yes, it is. You don't have to be usual.
Yeah, to be as concise as possible, I would say Brian Hatcher is a extremely driven, creative entrepreneur with a desire to teach and educate, the people around him for the betterment of their lives.
Amen. All right, so we're gonna get a little bit into that heftiness of what you do in your life. But first, let's start where I love to start, at the beginning. So how was your childhood, Brian? Like, where you grew up, your experiences? Just give us a tiny glimpse at what that was like for you.
Yeah, so much like you, I grew up in Hoover, Alabama, which is what I like to tell people, like typical suburbia. You have your mix of everything. I think when we were younger, Hoover wasn't as quite as diverse as it is today, but there definitely were a mix, right? So you got to experience all different kinds of cultures, races, everything, which I didn't realize how much that really was going to impact me later on in life, but definitely appreciate that. In typical suburbia in southern United States, sports is everything. So of course, big football town. I grew up playing sports nonstop, being very competitive naturally, have a very competitive family. So, yeah.
All right. So, in this suburbia that we lived in, how was your school life like? Just growing up as a Black male in the Hoover school system in Alabama. How was that for you?
Yeah. I think that I didn't really, I think it's hard to shape that question until you kind of get later on into school, right? Like when you're young, everybody's just everybody. You don't even almost recognize that you are Black or that you are different, which is something I often think about, because people don't, it's like, where do you get that? It's taught, really.
Yeah.
It's taught through your experiences, the other people in your lives, and what you see in the media, etc. But when you're kids, like, everybody is just a kid and everybody just hangs out. So I really would say up until late middle school, life was just life. It was hanging out with friends. It was going to the park, playing kick can, hide and go seek, all the normal stuff, riding bikes. Like, we didn't even really much have video games when I was a kid. I mean, we did, but not really. There was no online play.
No online, any of that.
Right. We used to driveway shoot basketball. So, like, it was a very different childhood than what kids experience nowadays.
So, all right, then this is another question I like to ask a lot of my interviewees. When was the first time you realized that you were Black, in a sense of that things started to be a little different, about like you seeing the world, your quote unquote woke moment of, hey, I'm not like everyone else around me, or I can't do all the same things that everyone else can do. When was that moment for you?
I think as you get older, though, people's your environment and the people you're around, their ideals start to take shape onto you. And I
Mhm.
think that happens for most people kind of once they hit middle school, maybe. And that's when I would say like kids and situations started to facilitate an environment that you could recognize, like, hey, we're not all the same. I remember specifically one instance where that's when people kind of first started getting into like partying. And it's funny because middle school parties are not like
No, they're not.
parties, right? They're like somebody's parent is nice enough to rent like an event space for somebody's
Clubhouse.
birthday, right? A clubhouse in a neighborhood, and they'll have like some music and people bring tons of presents, and it's really just like a really big kickback like hangout, right? So but needless to say, I'll never forget there was one kind of party where it was noted that basically like no black people were invited. And I remember like I don't remember who pointed it out, but it was a fairly large party too. And in my class, like we had a good number of black people. And so I just remember that I don't know why I distinctly remember this, but it was kind of like it was the first time that it made me question and be like, well, why is that? You
Mhm.
know? And I think that's when it really kind of first that kick started everything in terms of me really like thinking, well, would there be a reason that they didn't want, any black people there, or are they just not friends? Like and it wasn't even from a like negative standpoint. It was more so from just a hmm,
Mhm.
like why standpoint, right? Curious. That's when it kind of started kicking the curiosity in terms of, and are we that different? So yeah.
So I assume you probably got a lot of this stuff at home because I know I did. With like explaining that you are a black man and you are going to be different or anything like that. Can you explain if your parents ever gave you any of those notions or told you what you were, kind of the things that basically like that idea of the talk, but for
Mhm.
black people, or and you have to be able to recognize the look when you go some places, or you got to be more careful. You ever getting in that stuff when you were growing up?
I did. But what's funny is I think as kids, you naturally don't really listen to a lot of things your parents say until you start to experience them, right? And it was more of a like I was aware of it, but it was more of a one in one year and out the other in my mind. Like for those of you who don't know, like my dad grew up in Selma, Alabama. So that is like, you know, racial injustice capital of the United States. So my view anytime things would, people, my parents would say certain things was just kind of like, well, you guys experienced a different time. You guys experienced, a different whatever. And while I might not have said those things to them, it's kind of what I thought. I was like, we live here in Hoover where I don't see, people coming up to me yelling racial slurs and, telling me I can't go here. Right. So because I was never really heavily experiencing overt racism or overt discrimination, I didn't really take on to much of those talks.
Mhm.
And um yeah, but once I started to experience it, then it kind of you start to hear the echo of like, maybe this is what they were talking about. So
So I know for me, around that time when our phones and stuff really started capturing everything in the media is around like I was in high school. I know you were in high school, but also starting to go to college around that time. We grew up with all this media just hitting us each and every day. Especially in those like pivotal years of like us actually starting to make decisions and stuff like that. So in your high school, college years, when you started seeing a lot of this stuff being like on the media, how did that affect you? What did you think about when you like even just go out? Like how from that pivotal moment from that party up to maybe after your first, second, third year of college, throughout that time as a young man, what was that like for you? Just seeing all that stuff on the TV, news, social media.
yeah, I think it was I think it made me more aware because I think growing up in Hoover, I think not even just growing up in Hoover, I think when people grow up in a specific area, you're often in a bubble, right? Your experiences are shaped by where you are, and as a kid, you don't have a lot of control over that. And so I think when social media, because social media really got introduced like while I was growing up. Like
Mhm.
I remember when the majority of your friend group didn't have an Instagram and didn't have a Facebook. Like that was a thing. So,
I didn't get
but
it until I was literally 13 when that age difference actually made a difference. Like when you sign up for your thing on Facebook, it's like, "Are you at least 13?" And I was 12, and I was like, I gotta wait till my birthday."
yeah, yeah. And so I think part of me was fortunate. I don't know if you would say fortunate. I don't know because I think it's overload now. But
Mhm,
I think growing up, especially through my formative years and not getting that media onslaught of the worst, um, helped because I do think that a lot of the stuff that you get to see on the media are the extremes, right? And I think sometimes people forget that. They feel like what they're seeing consistently on the media is the norm.
mhm,
But, when you think of stuff that's happening on a consistent basis every single day, those crazy injustices that you see that are broadcasted nationally are not every single day occurrences. They do definitely happen, right? But they're not like, oh, it's just another day. This is what's happening kind of ordeals, right? And it's very easy to get caught up in that mindset if you're just sucked into the news and the media and scrolling and all you're looking at. And it'll honestly give you a negative connotation towards life and just towards a lot of things. So, but as I got older, it definitely just made me more aware of, hey, this definitely is something that is not, just isolated to like deep south or anything. This is definitely is something that happens across the US, and it made me want to just learn more, especially about other people and like how people grew up, which is something I want to get into, but like understanding because I'm a firm believer that like everybody does something for a reason. And oftentimes, if you don't agree with what somebody's done, you should probably try to understand why they did it, even whether you agree with it or not,
mhm.
which is important. And that's an important aspect that a lot of people lose, I feel like. But it helps you sometimes gain some clarity and find maybe some common ground on, okay, maybe if I understand that, hey, this person only did this because it's all they know, it doesn't make it right. But now you can move towards, well, how can I help teach them something different or tell them something to open their mind a little bit so that maybe this doesn't happen in the future. But a lot of people don't even want to break down those walls and getting to understand one another. Because at the end of the day, that's all people want. People just want to be understood, really.
Alright then, you said you wanted to get into, that understanding aspect. We can push that a little further. Have you ever had any experience at where, uh, it turned out like some of the things somebody was saying, like the ignorant things, or just somebody came forward to you about their experience of just being ignorant, not even understanding your perspective as a Black man?
Yeah.
That
So the first time I moved out of Alabama, I went to grad school. I had a friend, and I will never forget. We were just kind of talking, and we had kind of gotten close, and he just told me that he really appreciated our friendship. And I was like, "Hey, man, I appreciate you too." Like, like, yeah, you cool, right?
I was like,
um,
"Yeah, whatever."
yeah, but he took it a step further and was just like, "No, like, I grew up in an environment where like I didn't have any black friends," and I was like, "What?" Like, but I'm kind of like, "You racist?" Like, but
My son among us, I got you, bro.
like, do I need to go? Like, but basically, he was just saying like, I never really, and it goes back to talking about what you have control over. Like, he grew up in an environment, whereas he lived in an area. They were, very wealthy. They lived was very a private kind of area where a lot of the families all knew one another, and there wasn't a lot of diversity in the area, and so you're around a lot of like-minded people, and a lot of times that hinders your growth because there's more people on this earth, there's
Yeah.
more cultures on this earth, there's more everything. So he was just very appreciative because he's like, I've never had this kind of opportunity. There's things you want to ask that you don't know, right? There's things because when you're in an environment like that, all you have to go off of is the basis of the media. The the basis of whatever you might see on, TV shows, etc., which can give you a very skewed view, right? We always talk about how being black's not we're not a monolith, right? Like there's multiple kinds of black people, right? We're not all the same. So, um, and I feel like the media often paints a very singular picture of the black experience. But so when you're not introduced or you don't have, multiple friends who are black, uh, it definitely can skew your view and maybe sometimes give you a negative connotation of black people. So, and it was just eye opening hearing that, because I think no, people don't think about that,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of times somebody might have a certain disposition towards other cultures or other races, and a lot of people just immediately bash and attack them. But rarely does someone try to peel back the onion and understand why. Like, is there a reason, that you feel this way? How, and just talking to one another, because whether you agree with it or not, it might help you understand the downfall or the pitfall or where those feelings and actions come from, which is very important, I think.
So after having this conversation, so you said you were in grad school,
Yeah.
but let's even go a little bit further back to school, back to primary and elementary and grade schools for a second. Um, so obviously, our parents taught us to present ourselves a certain way. Was that ever in the back of your mind that you didn't want to be like that monolith or didn't want to act like that idea that the media portrayed when you were growing up, in terms of like the stereotypical way you speak or the stereotypical way that you're supposed to dress or anything like that? Did that ever have an effect on you, or did you ever even think about that in grade school?
Yeah, so definitely. I think that my parents did a good job of hammering in my mind that, like, you are not the monolith, right? Like, you can be whoever you want to be. But I don't think that that really took hold until later on in life. I think as a kid, when you're, in your primary, elementary, middle school, you just want to be liked, because that's your that's your whole world, right? And you don't necessarily have to be the coolest kid, but you don't want to be the outcast. Want to have at least a decent group of friends, some ride or dies that you could go eat lunch with, right? That
That's your spot at the table, bro.
right, if there's a pep rally or a gathering, you're like, where are my people? Like, so I think that it didn't, yeah, I didn't really have that mindset then, but as I kind of got a little older and came into my own of really being like, I need to be me and not a person that other people want me to be so that I can be liked. Uh, yeah, I feel like that's when things kind of really switched and changed. Like my friend groups changed, a lot of things changed, because it was like, okay, it doesn't really matter. There was kind of like a moment in terms of realizing, hey, it doesn't matter whether you try to be somebody that you're not or liked, or what people expect you to be, because I also feel like different cultures, not even just black, but different cultures in general, a lot of people fall victim to the stereotypical description of it. And some people feel like they have to live out that stereotypical description. Other people will call you inauthentic for not being the stereotypical description. Um,
You ain't black enough.
right. Oh, yeah. So I think it's very important to like strip those away and figure out who you are, and figure out, what really drives you, what makes you happy, what do you stand for, what are your morals, all of those things outside of the stereotypical descriptions, because that is what's ultimately going to set your path in life and set you up for success. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I guess this would be like one of our last things before we lighten the mood a little bit more. But so over the past, especially this past year, year and a half, we're Happy New Year into 2021. But a lot of stuff went on last year in 2020 about police brutality, especially over the summer. Even just yesterday, even more news coming out about people being charged or not being charged, about shooting cases. So, have you ever had any experience with the police, young, old, any experience at all? And was that experience, how did the media and that influence and all those things that going on around you influence that experience?
Yeah, luckily I have not had very many run-ins with
Hey, that's good.
police.
That's good.
I try to lay low. So um, I did have a couple, I would say when I was in like high school. Um, I distinctly remember one, and it was the first time I ever was like super nervous because I knew I was in the wrong when the police got to me. But I was flying, I was late. Um, and I don't remember whether I was going to school or football practice or something, but I was late and I was flying. And it's always right when you're in a hurry that the police are there. So I whizzed past a police car and I knew immediately. And you do the thing where you're like,
Are you
trying
following?
to, trying to look back in the rear view. And you also don't want to like slam on your brakes because that's like a giveaway of like, I was
Exactly.
flying and I just saw you. So like I just kind of let off the gas and let the car start just like rolling and going slower, but the lights switched on like super fast, like woo. So I knew, and like my heart's racing. I'm like, oh man, like what's gonna happen? Am I gonna need a ticket? How fast was I going? I used to suspend my license. Like, and I get put over, and I was super nervous because this was, and I was, even though I was young, I had already, like, similar to what you were saying, like I had already had those kind of talks with my parents in terms of just like, hey, if you run into the police, this is kind of how you want to act. This is what you want to do. You want to make sure you're very respectful. Yes sir, no sir. Put your hands in the dash. Don't move funny, right?
Move at all.
Hold your breath if you can, right? So, um, yeah. So, but to that point, I do want to say, like, I think that depending on who you are, like that, having those thoughts can sometimes be negative, right?
Mhm.
Because there are times where, um, if you allow those thoughts to really like overtake you, you will almost come off as,
You
you
did
know,
something.
right, because you're trying so hard to act like you're not doing anything, right? It's almost like it's like when I don't know, walk into your house or something and everything looks a little too perfect, or like you have a pet or something
Mhm.
and your pet's like kind of looking at you and you're like,
You gotta go check your house. What you
right,
do?
you're like, what'd you do? Why are so when it's like too much, or when somebody's being like way too nice to you and you're like, what'd you do? Like, what's up?
Mhm.
Right. So I feel like it's the same thing when you're trying like super duper hard, it's definitely noticeable. And it also kind of, I feel like, raises the awareness of the police officer, of they're like, oh, this person's hiding something. Right. So I definitely think there's a balance. It's hard to find that balance, but I think like um depending on who you are, of course, it's having that talk and understanding how to navigate yourself when you have an interaction with the police it's difficult, but I feel like that's something they should implement in schools, right? Police interaction. But anyway, um so he comes over and he's like, do you know how fast you're going? I was like, yes sir, like I'm sorry. And I was just honest with him. I was like, I'm late and I'm freaking out and I was flying and blah blah. We get to talking. I was like, I know I was in the wrong. I didn't even try to make up an excuse or whatever. He was like, can I have your license and registration? So I hand him everything and he goes back to the car, and then he comes back, and once he comes back, he said, he looks, and in my passenger seat was my football bag because I was going to school. And he was like, play football?
Yes, I do.
Sure. And for those of you who don't know, like Hoover is very much a football town, football like
They
run.
opened their season at the Georgia Stadium this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
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 So, I mean, it's a really big deal.
I
So, I was like, yes, sir. And, so then we just got to talking about football. So then and I think he even could tell, it's like there was like a tension release a little bit, right? I became a little bit more relaxed. We started having a conversation or whatnot. He was like, well, look, man, slow down, make sure you're on time, and I'll just let you off with a warning this time. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, a warning it is. So, that was like my very first encounter, but I remember I appreciate it because I got to like experience, I think, both sides where it's like you're super nervous, you don't know, and you're like, what, how do I act? And then at the same time, I'm gonna let you off easy this time. So um I think that when it comes to dealing with the police and those kind of interactions, I think first off, it's very important to like be honest with yourself and ask yourself, like, am I doing something wrong?
Mhm.
Or am I presenting a type of look, or am I in a situation that could appear that I'm doing something wrong? Because I think a lot of times we naturally in our minds know we're not doing anything. So it's almost like people feel not aggressive, but like almost combative when they're like, "Why are cops here? We're not doing anything, right?" And you don't want to come off that way. But there definitely are times where you aren't doing a thing and the cops show up. So I don't want to discount those experiences either. But I think it's definitely tricky, and just everything that's been going on, especially with the media, like just having a heightened awareness. I think being educated as well as like what your rights are, how a police officer should act, um, is very important because you have to be able to protect yourself um, any way that you possibly can in a situation. And I feel like a lot of people look for a one size fits all answer to all of these situations, and that's just not possible, right? Every single situation is different, every single person is different, every single police officer is different, and that's another thing that a lot of people need to understand. While there definitely are crooked police officers, you have to realize that police officers are still people. And beyond crooked police officers, there are crooked people in this earth, on this planet. So you have to kind of strip that back and understand that just because they are a police officer does not mean they are a perfect person. And you also have to look at them as another person. Um, I think that's very important. So yeah, I will say that now I feel like because of the media, I do have a little bit more of a negative connotation towards the police, but I try to do any and everything about possible to stay clear of police anywhere that I think a lot of police might be gathered or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just to be safe. I'd rather be safe than sorry. And it's unfortunate that now I feel like, and because of the light of everything that's happened, I feel like now people almost feel more safe when there aren't police around, which is
Well, that's the whole
strange.
fun thing. Like just in general with the black community, though, that's historically true too. Like I mean, but that's a whole history lesson. That well, if you're interested about that audience, you should go research a lot about like why that is, like in the black communities especially. But yeah, like that comes with the history of like where police, especially in the South, are rooted from and different things of that nature. But it's definitely true that calling the police is one of the last options that a lot of people, because you never want to, because if you get them involved in a whole, that's a whole nother thing.
Mhm.
That's it becomes so much more official, and there's so many more rules and so many more things that they have to do. Like I know like down here of like domestic violence calls, somebody has to go to jail. Somebody has to get, that is the law. You get a call, one of the two people are going to jail.
Yeah,
Whatever the story is, even if it was just like, okay, no, we're all good. It was overreaction. No, the law says one of y'all have to go to jail, so one of y'all are coming to jail. So it's one of those things where like those statutes and ordinances kind of also put them in positions where they have to take somebody to jail. But once it becomes official, it can change up the situation drastically. But I
yeah,
understand what you're saying. I
yeah.
definitely understand what you're saying. I would much rather not have to ever. ever get them involved. If I can handle it myself, I will. That's the way I feel with that. But let's move on a little bit from the heavy subjects. We've talked about that for a good bit now. I want to move on to you, Brian, a little bit more on just your day to day. So, what are some hobbies that you have, Brian? What do you like to do?
I like to do a lot of things. A lot of my hobbies, of course, with COVID got slashed, but it's one of my favorite things. I love live music. I love going to concerts,
Mhm.
music festivals, all that kind of stuff, traveling. So a lot of the things you can't do now. So now I spend a lot of time, honestly, just reading and building my businesses. So I'm an avid investor. I invest in a lot of things, stocks, options, real estate, you name it. And then I also help teach financial literacy to young professionals. So I spend a lot of time doing that. It's something I enjoy. I'm very passionate about it. So that's what takes up the majority of my time now.
All right, then. I guess it's a perfect segue into what's this big logo right here you
Yeah,
got going on?
yeah, that is Hatch Capital, and Hatch Capital is basically my brainchild. It's a combination of, I would say, things that I was already doing as an individual, but now it's packaged up into a brand to really just extend the reach so that I can help more people and just do more things. And there are two main pillars of the company, and that's education and investing. And so on the education side, the goal is to help walk people down a path to financial literacy. So that's through hosting workshops, online courses on basic topics that should be covered and taught in school, but aren't for some reason. And then, the goal is to go full circle to get to the investing side after you have a strong base of financial literacy. We want to take you to financial freedom. So getting involved investing with us, we have an active trading group that I host every single day. I also have a group that I discuss real estate with, and we're always looking at projects, investing, and trying to do everything that we can to build generational wealth and achieve financial freedom.
Heck yeah. By the way, y'all, I am a part of that group. Joined a couple of weeks ago. It's great. It's great. You get lots more members each day. So before we move on from that aspect of the conversation, can you give us some where we can find this material? And we're also gonna put in the description below, but like just for the audience.
Yeah, definitely. You can follow me on social media on any of the platforms, the big three, of course, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram
Mhm.
at hatch_capital. And then I am also on Clubhouse. If any of you have Clubhouse at
Yeah.
T_hatch. And I have the Hatch Capital. Oh, my computer's right plug that in. I also have the Hatch Capital link there, and I host rooms talking about various things about investing, financial literacy, etc. And then you can also visit my website at hatch-capital.com. And feel free to email me as well if you ever have any questions about financial literacy, investing. And that's going to be Brian at hatch-capital.com.
On point. Y'all please go give them a follow, sign up for some stuff. If you want to get rich, that's the way to do it. All right, Brian. So we talked about hobbies, we talked about things you like to do. What are your immediate future plans, I guess, with Hash Capital in terms of actually immediate and then long-term plans with what you want to do with it?
Yeah, so immediate plans is to continue to just grow and scale my reach and influence across as many platforms as possible. The goal is really to build up a community of young professionals who have a strong base of financial literacy and are all striving towards financial freedom so that they can help the people in their lives, the communities that they're in, to do the same. The goal is to have each one teach one at the end of the day. And then the long-term goal is to scale Hatch Capital into, beyond just an online presence into a physical presence.
Mhm.
So while we're building these courses, we're also actively building out a curriculum because I want to be able to provide a financial education centric curriculum to current educators to help facilitate that in their own classrooms until we are able to open up our own schools and kind of really push our own way of education. I feel like the way the school is now, it prepares you more for being a worker and getting a job, whereas I think school should prepare you for life. I think you should learn things that are going to affect everyone, right? Like you might take a class, you might take, I don't know, microbiology,
Hmm.
but you might not ever use that again in life. Whereas you're not taking a class on understanding interest and credit, and that's going to affect every single person throughout their entire life. So I think restructuring a curriculum that really prepares people for life, as well as how to learn. I feel like a lot of, school right now measures a lot of how you can memorize, but it doesn't mirror the real world. Because in the real world, you don't have to memorize things, right? You always have an abundance of resources. And it's important to learn how to become resourceful. And I think that school, the way it currently is, it doesn't teach you to be as resourceful as you can. It teaches you to retain as much as you can. And the goal is not to retain things. The goal is to understand how to leverage the people, the tools, the resources around you to become better. So, yeah, really just kind of rethinking education, and that's what Hatch Capital is going to be in the long term.
Heck yeah, definitely can get behind that. Well, I know you've been, I mean, honestly, for your whole life, just leveraging the the people you have around you and the resources that you have,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
even so much to like starting to get into the real estate business and moving over to Atlanta. I just want to know how has that been just over the past? You've been there for like a year and a half, 2 years now, or is it three?
Um, yeah, on and off over the last 2 years.
Yeah. So how has living in Atlanta been?
It's been great. I've loved living in Atlanta. It's kind of like our big city here in the South.
Hmm.
So just a lot more people, a lot more opportunities, and a lot more ways to network and just really meet more people, which is something I've really appreciated. Been able to meet some wonderful people, get great opportunities. Um, yeah, I think everyone also just for growth purposes should move out of the city that they grew up in. Doesn't matter if you go back, but at least move out for a little bit, experience other things, meet people you never knew who are nothing like you, get to know more people. It will help you a lot in life.
Broaden those horizons, get some more empathy in you.
Yeah.
All right, well, Brian, we're not going to belabor this too long. I know that at this point, I guess we could say, how old are you, Brian?
I'm 24.
You're 24. So he's done all these things, y'all, while only being that young, which means this interview doesn't have to go on for too much longer. Because I mean, like, we still got a lot of life to live.
Yeah, very true. We're just getting started.
Exactly. I can't wait to have you on the show. I don't know, like 10 years or something like that, where we're doing some crazy thing that's going on in both of our
Yeah.
lives. But before I do end the show, I do like to ask every one of my interviewees the same set of two questions. And I believe that we should always end the show with joy and happiness, because there's enough downtrodden media, enough negative stereotypes aimed at our people. I am a firm believer that Black people are not a people of suffering. We are people that have suffered. And there's a difference because we are people. And if we are seen as people, I think that that is going to be the step that brings us more towards better equity and equality in America.
Mm,
Specific.
amen.
So the first question I love to ask my interviewees before we head out is, Brian, what is the happiest you've ever been, or what is the times when you are the most? What are the times, excuse me, that you are most happiest?
Yeah. I think the times I'm most happiest is when I'm feeling fulfilled. And the the most recent kind of specific example of that was with through Hatch Capital. I was able to create a scholarship program where I not only taught upwards of 150 students how to really level up their scholarship game in terms of
Yeah.
getting acquiring scholarships, where to look for scholarships, how to apply them, how to make their applications stand out, etc. But I was also able to give away 2 scholarships to those students. But one of the students who participated and took the course, I woke up to an email from them. I've never met this girl. I never, don't know who they are. And it was just such a touching email telling me just how much I'd impacted her life, how much the course had helped her, how it was changing the way she thought, and how she couldn't be more grateful. And waking up to something like that and reading that and knowing that you have created an impact on someone else's life for the better, I feel like there's nothing more fulfilling than that. So that is definitely, those are the times where I am the happiest. That's the best start to a day, best start to a week, month that you can have, honestly. And the goal is to really just chase that feeling, is to help more and more people, impact more and more people. So
it's amazing. And I guess our final question that I like to ask is, out of this entire interview, this entire conversation that we've had, Brian, what is the biggest thing that you would want anybody watching to take away?
The biggest thing would probably be to be yourself. And I know that sounds a little cliche, but I feel like we live in a world, especially now more than ever, that it's easy not to be yourself. You can portray, whatever kind of look or persona you want to on social media, to try to feel like you are somebody you aren't, or fit into something that you don't, etc. But I think that a lot of people lose sight of the value in being authentic and being who you really are. And I feel like that's also the only way that you'll really find your purpose, so that you're able to share your story, right, with other people. And so, yeah, if there's one thing that I could tell people, is really just to be yourself, stop caring about what other people think. At the end of the day, people are going to love you, people are going to hate you, no matter what you do. So don't try to sway it one way or the other. Just be you and let the good times roll.
Yeah, Brian. Heck yeah. Well, everyone, I'm going to say thank you for Brian for being here. So this is my story, as we talked about before, is my little brainchild. And I'm actually graduating college this semester, so we will see how that will continue when it's not under the Flourish name, but specifically just under my name. I do produce the show. I am the host of the show. And the direction we are going is to create a website where people can send their own stories with guidelines. We're really focusing on that this semester so that this can continue on, even if I can't interview everyone, because our lives are busy. But this is very important to me, and I think it's very important to a lot of people in the Black community in general. I think that monolithic idea of Black people being one type of person has persevered for a long time. And most of the people that I talk to, if not all Black people that I talk to, all agree that we are not a monolith. So thank you for even watching and helping us break down those stereotypes and broaden your horizons. Until next time, I'm Christian Hatcher.
I'm Brian Hatcher, and this was my story.
All right, guys, can't wait to see you next time. Keep tuned in and go forth and flourish.
Never doubted